Well, good morning, everyone. Lovely to be up here again with the opportunity to speak to you. And special thanks to Dave for his messages last night as he stole some of my things. So that means I can shorten my talks quite considerably. Always find it amazing how things just tend to integrate, which is absolutely awesome. So we'll reinforce some of his points as we move on. We're going to be using Mentimeter if you've never used it. You can't quite see the code at the top, so it was sent in the group, so you can follow along on your phone. There'll be an opportunity for you to participate as well, so if you want to put it on your phone, you'll be able to participate in its various stages. You'll see when that comes up. So you may need to go into your app. I don't know whether you can scan that from down there, but if you do go into your app, there is the code there. Otherwise, you can go to menti.com. That's what it says up there, menti.com. And the code is, I'll say it twice, 3133-4940. So if you go to menti.com, it'll ask you for a code, and it's 3133-4940. Otherwise, it's on the app. Yesterday, we looked at sacrifice. Sacrifice is really the precursor to everything that we're going to discuss here. So our series today and for the remainder of the week is to do with purpose. And I'm hoping that you're not intelligent like me. So I've tried to really simplify the messages. There's 3 images. By the end of this talk, that's all you've got to remember is 3 things. Obviously, after 5 talks, there's 15, and then I'll summarize them down to 1. So you just have to remember 1 picture by the end of the entire series, which is hoping it won't be too difficult. Because I normally find I can't remember many things. So we will just have 3 things to remember from this session, and that's it. And in just 1. So hopefully it shouldn't be too difficult. We often only question our purpose and what the meaning of life is when things aren't going well. And that's often not the time to really be doing it. But it's something that is fundamental to all of us, is to have purpose. And so in this first session today, we're just going to look at why purpose is important and some of the elements of purpose from a scriptural perspective. And then in our remainder, we're going to look particularly at what God's purpose is for us. So this is your first opportunity. You need to tell me what that is. So on your device, you should see something that you can type on. So you should be able to type an answer. I'm going to give you a second to type there. I can see 7 responses are up. Give you another few seconds, and then I'm going to pop them up. This is an easy one. We're starting easy. Oh, right, there we go. Lots of intelligent people. It is, the bigger the answer means they got it. Can opener, tin opener, all sorts of other things. A tin carving utensil, all sorts of other intelligent people coming with answers there. A smiley face as well, yes. Okay, so that one was easy. That is a tin or a can opener. Okay, here. Now to see if you know what that is. All right, give you another few seconds to see if you can figure out what that is. We've got the answers coming in. No idea. Thin claw, yellow thing, foot measurer. Very handy. I see 1 correct answer there. Well done. Mouse strap, shoe remover, getting close. Right, I wouldn't have known what it was. My brother bought it for me. My middle brother, Steve, bought it for me for a birthday present. And I was like, what is this thing? It's actually extremely handy. I'll actually show you a picture of what it's for. And that's what it is. You actually clip it on in your car and you can stand on it. So if you've got like an SUV and we have a rooftop tent on top of that, if you like doing roofs, it's very difficult to get up there. So you can step on that and then you can climb up. So very handy device. And I think the other side is if you're stuck in the car and you're drowning underwater, you find the device, you unpack it, you open it, you smash the window and look at it. You know how it works. Always find these things very interesting, but in that moment of panic, you wouldn't have a clue where that thing is. But anyway, you've got it in case. Right, so the point is that we don't always know the purpose of something unless someone tells us what it is. The first thing was obvious, the can open. The second thing wasn't obvious. And so when it comes to our lives, it's not always obvious what is our purpose, and even more importantly, as we're going to see, is what is God's purpose for us. Right, there's a bonus that you're going to get just by simply listening to the series, and everyone will get given 7 years of extra life. Okay, so if you focus for the series, 7 years. So there's very few series you can go to and you come out with a bonus 7 years of extra life. Now, it's true. The University of Michigan did a study on this, and they found that people who had a purpose in their life, on average, obviously, tended to live 7 years longer, simply because they had purpose. And they had literally less risk of death from all types of diseases, all types of issues. And obviously it's related to stress and all of those things which bring on a lot of the diseases in our life. So that is incredible. And as we said in our previous session, God knows this. He knows the things that enable us to live the best possible life. And having a purpose aligned with Him, well, that is number one, and there is nothing better than that. And so we find ourselves in a world where many people struggle with what the meaning of life is. And we have philosophers who've debated this and discussed this. We've had people build computers, massive computers, and ask it the question, what is the meaning of life? And after millions of years, it comes back with the answer, 42. Exactly, and I think it's so poignant that it's 42 because everyone goes, what the heck does that mean? Exactly. We still don't even understand what it is. Obviously, that is from a book, if you don't know, The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. But the sad reality is, unless we can ask the person, the being who is the designer, we're never going to figure out the purpose. And it's not an AI, it's not a fantastic computer, it's not even a clever philosopher, because they are one of the creatures who was made. We have to ask the designer of the item, what's the purpose? And so the only true way to find purpose is to return to the designer. So, why am I here? Well, there's two possible answers. If you don't believe in God, essentially, we are a random collection of atoms moving randomly through the universe. We have come together, and by very definition, we are purposeless. So if you don't believe in God, the implication is it is purposeless because everything is random, and random by its very nature is not a purpose. The other option is there is a God, He created us, and therefore He must have created us just like the little stepper to get up the car for a purpose. And so it's really important that we understand what that purpose is. Right, here's a moment for you you'll see on your device, how clearly would you say the following are for you in your life? Now you've got a quick moment to put in your answer. You see this little scale. Your first one is God's purpose. Is it unclear or clear? My personal purpose, is it unclear or clear? I think there's a little number you can choose, 1 to 5 or something. Give you a moment to choose that. Just reflect on it for a moment. We're not going to see your personal answers. It's just going to aggregate them. So in your own life, how clearly would you say the following are? Your perception, your understanding of God's purpose and your own purpose, personal purpose. Right, there we go. So average 8.1 saying, yep, sort of understand God's purpose, which we'd hopefully expect for a community like this, and we're going to explore that. And then my own purpose. Obviously, that is often more difficult because we're all individuals, and we will touch on that later on as well in the series. What is the purpose of your life? If you had to think about it, if someone had to come to you and ask you that question, would you have an answer for them? And we had sort of like a 60% there. But often even when people say they know that, if you had to distill it to something, it's quite difficult. And it's important because when we can distill things down, it makes us better able to hone in on them. It makes us better able to live them. Well, you might say, well, my purpose is I want to complete my studies. I want to get a good job, and then maybe I will, have a home and get married, have a family, and yeah, that's my purpose. No, that's not a purpose at all. That is a goal. And so what I want to do to start with is just to understand a little bit of the terminology so that we know what we are actually talking about. So that might be a typical response for a young person, and it sounds like a great answer, but that's not the answer to the question. What is the purpose of your life? Not your goal. What is the purpose of your life? What is your why for existing? So before we turn to God's word, what I want us to do very quickly is understand just these three words, because they'll sort of come through the rest of the series. And that is the difference between a goal, a plan, and a purpose. And we just want to quickly look at that, and then we will see how that plays out. So here we go. The goal is essentially where you're going. Your plan is how you're going to get there. And what we really want to talk about is the purpose, the reason for going in the first place. And often we confuse these things, and we live life according to our goals, or we might be obsessed with our plans, but we actually don't understand the purpose. And the purpose is the thing that gives it meaning. The purpose is the thing that is the power. And that's why I refer to this as purpose-powered living. So, you might say, well, my goal is to become a teacher. Great goal. My plan is to do a teaching degree. Right? You need a plan if you're going to reach your goal. My purpose, why do you want to be a teacher? Good question. A lot of people don't ask the question before they set out on a career. Well, I want to impact people's lives. Okay, that's great. So now you have a purpose behind all of these. But, however, our goals can change for various reasons. And if our goals change, then our plans need to change. But our purpose should never change. This is the key. Because once we understand what our purpose is, it is okay for your goals and therefore your plans to change. But our purpose should remain the same. So that is really important. So maybe you meet someone and they've been doing occupational therapy, and you think, wow, that sounds great. So my goal is I actually want to become an OT. And so now I need to do an OT degree. That's fine. But my purpose remains the same, to impact people's lives. And so that's why it's so key that the purpose is the foundation for everything. It must drive our goals and our plans. And so there is a relationship, or should be a relationship, of a servant master between our goals and our purpose. Our goals are servants to our purpose. Our goals serve our purpose, not the other way around. It's very important. Our goals must serve our purpose. The problem is, if you don't have a purpose, your goals will serve other people's purposes. And that is invariably what happens in life. We end up living other people's purposes. So someone's purpose may be simply to make as much money as they possibly can. And you get sucked into that, and your goals basically are serving their purpose. And that is when we end up having a purposeless life. We reach the top, we achieve the degree, we achieve whatever it is we thought we wanted to achieve, and we feel that life is empty. We hit the goal. The plans brought us to that thing. We got the house, we got the degree, we got the car, but somehow it feels empty. And why is it empty? Because we had no purpose. And so it's very important that we have purpose. Ecclesiastes puts it like this: meaningless, meaningless, says the teacher, utterly meaningless. Everything is meaningless. What do people gain from all their labors at which they labor under the sun? And what he's describing is the purposeless life. And that's why I put it like, it's this balloon that's empty. You feel so deflated, even though you thought you were achieving something. And if there was anyone who tried every goal, it was Solomon. He tried it all. And at the end, it was purposeless. And so this is how our lives can begin to look. We're going to work so hard to achieve things. And I'm sure there are some in this room who have experienced that. We've been so busy. Our life has been so busy. And you can find it in your career. You can even have had a long career doing things and get to the end and say, oh, what was that all about? Or I worked so hard on a project and I get to the end and think, what was that all about? Well, that's because we didn't understand the purpose in the very beginning. So how do we find work that is not meaningless? And, well, Paul thankfully answers Solomon's questions a couple of thousand years later, where Solomon's saying, well, it's also meaningless. What can we do about it? Well, Paul says, therefore, my dear brothers and sisters, stand firm, let nothing move you. Always give yourselves fully to the work of the Lord, because you know that your labor in the Lord is not in vain. And so what he's telling us, there is a work that is not empty, that is not in vain, but it is a work that is of the Lord. And that brings us to what we want to look at. What is the Lord's purpose? Because if we align with that, we won't have the empty balloon syndrome, which is something we don't want to have in our lives. I think a simple way of thinking about the difference between our plans and our goals and our purpose is just quite simply the difference between the what, the how, and the why. So, your goal is what you want to achieve. Your plan is how you're going to get there. The real important thing is your purpose. That's your why. That is why I am doing it, why I exist. This is the big existential question when you're standing on the rim of the Grand Canyon and you're looking at it all and saying, why? Why? And at some stage we all get that question. But rather let's answer it and understand it from God's perspective, and then everything changes. You might say, well, my goal is to dig a 3 meter by 3 meter hole by 5 p.m. Well, I've got a plan. I'm going to use some shovels. And why? Because it's my job. Now, that is a terrible purpose. In fact, they use this in prisons. And I remember when our famous President Nelson Mandela was in prison, this was one of the punishments. They get you to dig holes and then fill them in. Dig hole, fill it in. Dig hole, fill it in. Why are they doing that to you? They're trying to make you feel terrible, that you are purposeless. Empty, empty, empty. There's no achievement at all. We remove that out of your life. And that's sometimes how our lives can feel, digging the hole and filling it in, because there is no why beneath it. And so it makes us despondent. And so you think about for yourself. If I have to think about what it is I'm doing or what it is I'm trying to achieve, my goal, do you know what that is? If you think, well, how am I going to achieve it? I'm sure you could probably figure that out, or maybe you're on that route to achieving it. But it comes back to why. Why am I doing it? Why am I on this path to achieve this goal? Well, maybe I say, well, you know what, my goal is I want to buy a beach house. That's great. Okay. I've got a plan. The plan is I'm going to work really hard, and I'm going to save money so that I can get this house. My purpose, well, it's a good purpose. I want to have a place to enjoy time with my family. Okay? Now, sometimes we need to look at these things, and as I said earlier, is that your goal must be the servant of your purpose. So is that the case in this? Well, let's look at it. On the surface, this sounds like a pretty good idea. Buy a beach house and work hard, save money, and have a place to enjoy time with my family. But in the outworking of this, something's going to go wrong, and you're going to sacrifice your purpose to your goal. Because the very fact that you're going to have to work really hard means what? You will sacrifice time with your family. And so finally, when you get the beach house, well, the family doesn't want to know each other. Everyone's doing their own thing. No one's interested. And you've sacrificed your purpose, the thing that you really wanted, in trying to achieve your goal. And that's why I said it's so important that purpose reigns supreme. So when you look at that and you say, I need to work really hard, lots of overtime, little time at home so I can get the beach house to spend time with my family. And when you look at it through the lens of purpose, you say, that is stupid, because I am not going to achieve my purpose. I will get my goal, but not my purpose. And that's why purpose is primary and goal is slave to purpose, never the other way around. As Solomon says, many are the plans in a person's heart, but it is the Lord's purpose that prevails. And so we can have lots of plans, but if we really want them to be powerful, if we really want to have a purpose-powered life, let's let them align with God. And that's going to change everything. Right, so there are two purposes. Two purposes, and when they align, they can change everything. The one is our own purpose, our personal purpose, and we each have one of those. And we're going to touch on it right at the end, because we'll see once we understand God's purpose, everything fits in beautifully with that. But the second is God's purpose. And that's the overriding one. That's the powerful one. And when you align with that, everything works, as we read in the previous passage. Because if it aligns with God's plans, everything comes together. And so we want our purpose to align with God's purpose. Those people are zealous to win you over, but for no good. What they want is to alienate you from us so that you may have zeal for them. It is fine to be zealous, provided the purpose is good, and to be so always, not just when I am with you. So that's what we want. We want a purpose that is good. So we want to discover a good purpose. Now, as I said, a good purpose is one that is aligned with God. So that's our key, to find what is God's purpose and how can I align my purpose with that. And in David's life, we find that he had a purpose exactly like that. And imagine having this said about you. Now, when David had served God's purpose in his own generation, he fell asleep. Wow. He served God's purpose. That's what I want to answer. How do I serve the greatest purpose of all? Because if I align to that, everything falls into place. Now, what's really interesting is the Greek word here for served, because I think it brings out a really, really powerful lesson. Right. So, when David has served God's purpose, you've got an opportunity to try and guess what the word means. So the Greek word served is linked to rowing, sailing, steering, or ships. Okay, there's a picture of a ship there, so doesn't really tell you which is the correct answer. Okay, so we've got votes, some saying steering, sailing, rowing, ships. Okay, steering's winning, steering's up to 56, and go steering, and 31 coming in, it's rowing at 37, and 21 close behind with ships being at 14, and steering going up to 79 and holding at 83. 83 is just steering and rowing at 48. Right? Okay, right, it looks like steering. Let's see who is correct. This is your moment to feel good about it or not. Ah, there we go. Ah, right. It's rowing. Okay, so the correct answer is rowing. So the root word for served, David served God's purpose, is the word, and I'm not Greek, so I can't really say the word, hyperites or something, and it basically originally referred to an under rower. So they had these vessels that were called triremes or something like that. They were ancient Greek warships, and these were the people who were the under rowers. That's the same word. They were the people who served. So there was a higher authority, someone on deck, and you were below deck, and you were doing, wasn't very pleasant, doing your little rowing thing below deck while the person up top gave instructions. So what do we learn from that? Firstly, that David was prepared to work below deck. That's where he worked, below deck. Didn't matter that he was king. He was below someone. He was below God. That's where we work. We talk about fellowship. We talked about with Dave. We can do all sorts of things here, but we are below God. That's where it happens. We're in the fellowship below God, under his direction. Well, it's not working together for me. Well, it's working together for our purpose. And sometimes me getting the splinter in my hands as I'm rowing, and I'm saying, well, I don't know how this is helping me. Somehow it's helping someone else. It's our purpose. Work together for good. And sometimes it doesn't seem like, but it's getting the ship to where it and so and the power we're aligned is vital. To understand that purpose is communal and it outweighs and is more important. Anything about purpose. Earlier, you end up with 7 years extra life, but it's purpose will pull your life. You know, sometimes talk about push myself to achieve something. But when something is hooked on you and it pulls you, it's even better. That's what purpose is. Purpose is a year we went to a little safari up in a place called, if you've heard of Africa, we live in South Africa, which is in the south of Africa. We often people, you know, we say we live in South Africa and they say, where's that? Oh, that's up in the north of Africa. Okay. So that's in the south of Africa. Just north of us is Namibia and Botswana and Zimbabwe, etc. So we went up through Namibia into Botswana, which is really amazing. And Botswana has lots of wild beasts, and they have these big national parks, but there's just nothing there. It's just like, there's just bush and animals and wild critters and stuff, and little, they're not called roads. I don't know what they're called. They're just these standy things that just trap you all the time. And so you drive in these things, and it's wonderful, and then you get to river things like that one, which we thought, oh, that's not too bad. Because what you normally meant to do is you get out and you walk across it. But there are things that live in the rivers that want to kill you. So you don't always want to do that. I mean, it's not very pleasant walking across a muddy river when there's like a crocodile or a shark or an elephant or whatever it may be waiting there to kill you. So we got to this one, and it's Matthew, my brother, and his wife Petra and the kid over there. And we thought, no, this one doesn't look too bad. And so I went into it and got like halfway across, and just the mud was terrible, and just boom, I was done. So thankfully Matthew was behind me, he hooked me, and he pulled me out. And what's happened, I then managed to get through speed or whatever, I got through to the other side, only for him to get in, and he got stuck. Thankfully I was on the other side, and then I managed to hook onto him and pull him out. But what's interesting is when I was being pulled out of it, it didn't matter which way my steering wheel was. The car ahead of me, which was on solid ground, pulling me, I went that direction. And so you're in the mud and your steering wheel is doing whatever, and you can be pointing that direction, but your car's just going that way. And that's what purpose does. It's a power outside of you that is so powerful, it just pulls you, no matter where you are pointing. So imagine when you've got a purpose that powerful. So sometimes we are pointing off course, but we're aligned to God's purpose, and he just pulls you his direction. That's absolutely awesome. It's like something that happens every day. Out there is the sun and the moon, and down here is the sea. And it doesn't realize that every day that sun and moon is pulling it and changing tides. And you end up with these high tides and these low tides. And when the sun and the moon are aligned, you get these super tides. You get spring tides. It's a purpose. It's a power outside of us that's pulling. But it's experienced here on earth. And it's exactly the same thing for us. Out there is a God incredibly powerful. But his purpose and the pull is felt in our lives right here. And so when we have a purpose-powered life, it'll pull us regardless of what's happening. And this is the power of a purpose beyond our understanding. And this is what we want to look at. A purpose that is pulling us to something divine, something that is truly transcends all our thinking. I don't know how many of you have read the book by Viktor Frankl, Man's Search for Meaning, a very powerful book. Viktor Frankl was in the Nazi concentration camps, and he was a psychiatrist, psychologist, I can't remember which, but he actually used it as an opportunity to study and think about human suffering and all of those sort of things. And it's a very powerful book when you look at what he had to say. And in his book, he says some interesting little quotes, and I thought this was particularly interesting. He said, those who have a why to live can bear with almost any how. And that's exactly what purpose is about. Those who have a why can bear with almost any how. Life is never made unbearable by circumstances, but only by the lack of meaning and purpose. That's from someone inside a Nazi concentration camp. That is the power of purpose to pull us out of any situation, no matter which way the wheels are facing, no matter how deep the mud. When we are aligned to a sun that is so powerful, it will pull us regardless. And that is what we are called to. No one can come to me unless the Father who sent me draws them. There's a power. There's Jesus. I am a purpose so powerful, I drag people to me. Imagine being aligned to that. And if I be lifted up from the earth, I will what all men unto me. You've got a moment, type it in. What do you think? If I am lifted up from the earth, I will. This is purpose. This is the power of purpose. There we go. The bigger the word, the right. I will draw all men unto me. That's purpose power. That's Jesus on the cross. That's sacrifice. It pulls all of us towards him. There's something also fascinating when you look at the Greek word purpose. There's something really interesting in that word. In Romans chapter 8 we read, and we know that in all things God works for the good of those who love him, who have been called according to his purpose. And it's this little Greek word, prothesis. Right. Quiz time. Right, I see everyone's in there, so I can start the quiz. Faster you answer. Oh no, all answers no. Everyone good. Have you not read what David did when he was hungered, and that they that were with him, how he entered into the house of God and did eat the showbread? I want to know which of those words is the same word, purpose. One of those words is the same word, purpose. So you have to type the word. Give you a moment. Right, we've got 78, 80, they're flying in there. Over 100 answers. Right, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. There we go. The correct answer is showbread. Okay, right, so if you got showbread, well done. That is the correct answer. Now, why is that particularly interesting? Well, purpose actually means setting forth. That's what the word showbread is, to show. And we're going to look at this just for a moment because it's really, really interesting. So it's the same word, showbread, is the word purpose. So what does showbread teach us about purpose? Well, let's just think about it for a moment. And we're going to read something about showbread. And let's just ask ourselves, what do we learn about purpose from showbread, considering it's the same word? So here's the passage. If you want, you can open it up. Otherwise, on the screen, Leviticus chapter 24, verses 5 to 9. Take the finest flour and bake 12 loaves of bread using 2/10 of an ephah for each loaf. Arrange them in 2 stacks, 6 in each stack, on the table of pure gold before the Lord. By each stack you must put some pure incense as a memorial portion to represent the bread and to be a food offering presented to the Lord. This bread is to be set out before the Lord regularly, Sabbath after Sabbath, on behalf of the Israelites, as a lasting covenant. It belongs to Aaron and his sons, who are to eat it in the sanctuary area, because it is the most holy part of their perpetual share of the food offerings presented to the Lord. So, what do we learn from that? Firstly, showbread is the finest flour. And the same comes to purpose. Our purpose has to be our best offering. It's your finest flour. So what is your best? That's the first part of your purpose. The second is it's arranged. Our purpose needs to be intentional. It's not random. Think about it. I want a purpose that is intentional. You don't randomly get some bread on the table there. It's arranged. So God is saying your purpose must be intentional. We must live it intentionally. Here's a quick question. How often do you pray about your purpose? How often do you actually pray about your purpose? We pray about lots of things. It's really important. We give thanks. We ask God. But how often do you pray about your purpose? Okay, we can see there, mostly either seldom or never and a few. So always. Well, why is this important? Part of the purpose bread, the showbread, was incense. What is incense? Incense is the prayers of the saints. We need to pray our purpose. We need to pray our purpose. Because why? Because your purpose is your power, your purpose is your why. If you're praying about your purpose, everything comes into line. So part of the offering, the showbread, was incense. We must pray our purpose. And then it was set out before the Lord regularly. Purpose isn't something that you consider for a few days while we're at conference. Purpose is always. Purpose is regular. Purpose is every day. Purpose is a power that needs to be lived daily. And then it must be eaten in the sanctuary. Purpose is a food. It sustains us. It gives us meaning. It doesn't make us feel like an empty balloon. And so purpose is sustaining. And so that's it. Show purpose is our best purpose, is intentionally living our purpose, is praying your purpose, is living it always, and is letting it sustain you. That's what we want as a purpose. When it is our best intentional, prayed, lived, and sustaining purpose, it changes everything. That is a show purpose. And that is the type of purpose that we want in our lives. In him also we have obtained an inheritance, being predestined according to the purpose in him, of him, who works all things according to the counsel of his will. It's the purpose of God. And so let's bring it all together. Three things, three little pictures that you can hopefully maybe remember. This is the summary of it all. We sit below deck. It is a service of fellowship that we work together. That is the first part of purpose. A fellowship below deck that we row together under the guidance of our God and our Savior. Secondly, it's a purpose like a sun. It pulls us. It's a power beyond us. It matters not which way our wheels face, how deep the mud. The sun, once it's hooked onto us, can pull you out of anything towards the destination we're going. And thirdly, our purpose is a showbread. It is a purpose that is shown and lived. It is a purpose that is intentional, that is prayed. It is a purpose that is sustaining. It is a purpose that is in the presence of God. And so that is our purpose. As simple as that. And so what is God's purpose for us? Well, we're going to explore that in more detail in the remaining of our sessions, but we know this, that it's a purpose of fellowship. It's a purpose of power. It's a purpose that is before God and sustains us like nothing else ever will. And so let us bear that in mind as we remember it is God who works in you to will and to act in order to fulfill his good purpose. Amen.